Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Akiva Schaffer's new movie, Naked Gun. The movie follows Frank Durbin Jr., being the son of Frank Durbin, who's been portrayed in this time by Liam Neeson, who must succeed in his father's footsteps to essentially prevent the closure of the police squad in LA, and of course, solve a case that involves the missing plot device. Akiva Schaffer is one of the biggest comedic names to have emerged out of the 2000s, particularly being a member of Lonely Island, who has done a lot of directing work, not just with Red Hot and Popstar and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which all do involve at his Lonely Island co-star Andy Samberg, and he's also did venture off towards stuff without Andy with The Watch as well. But this time, he is also known for his producing work as well, with like Big Sea Bear and Palm Spring, also starring Andy Samberg. And he's also directed most of the videos for Lonely Island as well. And for this time, he's teaming up not just with Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson as the starring roles in this movie, but he's also teaming up with with comedian maestro Seth MacFarlane, who's best known for like American Dad and Family Guy, as well as his stuff he did in the 90s like Cow and Chicken, to produce a reboot of the Naked Gun series. Although the development of the new Naked Gun films had been in development for some time, but they did really pick up pace in 2009, even though 33 and a third, or The Final Insult as it's been unanimously known as, has been considered the final and therefore the final installment of the entire Naked Gun series with Leslie Nielsen. In 2009, it was essentially going to almost be rebooted, not just with Leslie Nielsen on a much smaller role. It's going to be one of these directed videos passing the torch down to a next generation. But however, due to numerous factors that came into it, like budget concerns, and of course there was the creative differences between writers, producers, actors being involved in this, and just an overall lack of confidence. And of course the final nail in the coffin being that Leslie Nielsen passed away a year after the announcement came about in 2010, so it was unfortunately dead in the water. So then the second person to bring it up is Ed Helms, who's again a well-known comedian and comic actor, did lots of voice acting. Tried again to do another installment of this, but however didn't exactly get on good terms with the film's original director and producer and writer, David Zucker, but unfortunately it quickly fell apart, not just due to constant infighting with Zucker, but of course it just never really took off. Then Seth MacFarlane came along and had Liam Neeson to take the realm of Frank Durbin, who of course had previous collaborations with Liam Neeson and Seth MacFarlane, particularly with stuff like in Family Guy and as well in Once Upon a Time in the West, which did receive very polarizing reviews at best. So you put that in mind, particularly you have the producer whose best known work is Family Guy, the director whose best known work is Lonely Island, and an actor who's primarily known for more serious and more dramatic stuff. How they've essentially made a reboot for essentially well over 31 years in the making, and how they pulled it off, particularly in this installment, I feel like they did a really good job in like kindling to the spirits of the original Leslie Nielsen and David Zucker original films, and keeping to the more wild, off-kilter and somewhat offbeat humour that the franchise is definitely known for, and do it in a more of a noir setting without taking itself at all very seriously. Which again plays very, very well to a lot of the strengths of these creatives. A lot of things could go easily wrong with like remakes or reboots, as in you can embrace the original, but there's going to be a thin line that do you understand what made it so well, and for particularly in this one, it not just embraced the original's campiness and deadpan wit, but it somewhat embraced it and really understood it to its full amount, and definitely did its homework. Not just from rewatching the movies all over again, but also somewhat taking in mind this is from the original minds that did like Top Secret or Airplane or Hot Shots, the 1 and 2 movies. Again, this is definitely now in a really weird era where comedy is now largely relegated to streaming affairs, and parody movies, particularly on this style, has pretty much been all but extinct from the mediascape altogether. Not just with poor quality films like Disaster Movie and Meet Spartans, but also some attempts to somewhat rekindle it a little bit, like the Haunted House films with the Wayans brothers, who are pretty much died out at this point. But I feel like just definitely give it a lot more life and a lot more energy into that more spoofy comedy sketch that has been somewhat more popular well now on the online surface with films with stuff like cinema sins and how it should have ended, honest trailers. So much so, it's pretty much solely relegated into more online fare. But again, and now this is at this point where studios are somewhat overthinking comedies a lot nowadays. But I feel like this is a move in the right direction, in my opinion. And how, like the original films, they need to keep up the momentum of like having more and more jokes. Like pretty much it's a laugh-a-minute movie. These type of films, particularly with stuff like Airplane and Hot Shots. And how this movie keeps going is has a fair balance of like running jokes and some pop culture references that doesn't get too dated, and just some really goofy, like really deadpan jokes, and it's just a really fun, really silly movie. Like it does, even some jokes take some very illogical turns, but at the same time you're going to have to figure out in the film's logic. Like for example, when they investigate a car crash in some reservoir or some ditch, how would you remove a car from a ditch or reservoir? Simple. You get a big claw from these big claw machines and try to cut the car up. And of course the car's going to just keep falling off the claw, which I again found really hilarious. And there's also the running joke of the main characters always getting coffee or always have a coffee in their hand. Like, even when someone's like, oh, do you want a coffee? They just throw away the coffee cup they have in their hands and have that coffee as well. And even some jokes like, oh, do you want a really big thing of coffee? Like a notably large, bigger cup of coffee. And they will, of course, will go with that. And even in more serious scenes where you wouldn't logically have coffee, like, I don't know, driving a car or something, like, so I was investigating this thing and that. I'm driving down the LA roadways. Oh, thank you. And somehow a hand comes in and gives him coffee still. I think probably the favourite scene in that, and also some scenes where, of course, he and Pamela Anderson's character go on a little weekend vacation in a little cabin in the snowy mountains, and of course they do some wholesome activities like making sure the snowman doing some spells to make the snowman alive, and it horribly backfires. Again, really weirdly off kilter, but I imagine it's down to their logic. But I think my favourite gag out of this is the silhouette gag that's somewhat similar to Austin Powers, where Liam Neeson preps up a turkey, and with Pamela Anderson and his dog being present, and from the silhouettes it looks unbelievably sexual, as in, like for example, like when Pamela Anderson is cleaning out the oven with like a brush, it just looks like they're both having oral sex. And of course it gets a lot more cruder when he's like buttering up a turkey or putting some stuff on the turkey. I'm British and we only have turkey for Christmas. It just made it look like he's like wanking on top of the turkey. Like it just goes into the dirty gutter in your mind, and I was just laughing and bawling to the point I was just curling up in my cinema seat, and of course I was just beginning to cough a little bit because I was laughing that hard. Like I haven't laughed that hard since watching The Panto Goes Wrong. It was that level funny. And the franchise still does what it does best, as in do some background jokes, as in jokes you have to really pay a lot of attention to. Like there was instead of the big arena in LA being the crypto.com arena, or what a lot of people still call it, Staples Arena, this is now called the Ponzi Scheme.com arena, as in making jokes about the cryptocurrency. And as of course there's the Office, which had the Office Squad printed on the windows, but the squad is like done the other way, as in it's meant to reflect back to you, but it's, you just got one saying like please squad or Lee squad. Like I'm talking like the tiny red man from Twin Peaks. Like half of it's like normal, half of it's like backwards. Like it's just some jokes you have to pay attention for. And there was even the opening the opening scene where we look into his office. There's like a whole desk full of like empty coffee cups. There was the typical mugshot shoot you do see like most police station scenes, and this time it looks like a modelling scene, less of a mugshot scene, as you do see like like little fans go off, and you do see the criminal like crouching towards camera like a model, and you even do see some kids crying because their little lemonade for $1 stand got busted, and the police have to arrest them. Like, it's just so incredibly silly and funny, and particularly, again, like with the Naked Gun films, you have to pay attention to get even more jokes. And even in the credit scenes, it gets a lot more hilarious as well. Like, for example, there's like credits saying like dressings, like Russian, Italians, and there's also like an eye test, like you say E, F2Y, Z or something, like all in like small letters. It has that in the credits as well. And there's also in the set decoration where you have an acknowledgement like all the people that built the sets, and you do see like acknowledgements for IKEA and oh, this is the wardrobe I rented for my auntie. Like, oh, like me and my dad, who I watched it with, were just still cackling on and still snickering on, particularly when the credits, because they still had some more jokes thrown in for good measure, even in the credits as well. There's also the subplot plot line with Beth Davenport being portrayed by Pamela Anderson in this movie, who is essentially going forward with her own investigation, and even some points is in cahoots with Frank Durbin, particularly in the bar where we meet the antagonist of the film, and in a way to distract the main villain, being Richard in this movie. In his little way, she has the idea to distract Richard by doing some really awful scat singing, while of course Frank Durbin is fighting off goons in the back room, so much so they have a count of all the goons that he's fought off with. Like, I wish the Raid movies had that, as in have all the have a tally of how many goons the main protagonist had fought off in this movie. But again, the scat scene, that scene alone is just a master stroke of how really silly the actors can really go for that, because I feel like that's more akin to the spirit of something that Lewis would do in like Family Guy, because this is produced by Seth MacFarlane. I feel like this is somewhat spiritually a scene where Lewis needs to cause attention or something by doing some really awful scat singing. I feel like the one massive critique I had about the movie is, I think mostly in the third act of the movie, where I feel like there's some things that kind of bugged me a little bit. Like, even though the third act essentially takes place mostly in a UFC match, I feel like it should have done with a Joe Rogan spoof, or Joe Rogan or cameo or something, or a character that's essentially mocking Joe Rogan, since he's essentially the main person behind that and the main commentator behind that, or could essentially joke about his podcast and that his theories that he believes in. And also, I feel like the plot device that activates people to be violent and something like that, I feel like it stems a little too on the nose with something like the Kingsman movie. I think it's the Golden Circle, I think it was, or no, it's definitely the first film where it is a device or a Bluetooth thing that causes people to be really violent, just pick fights with everyone. I feel like it kind of can get too much spirit to a point. It's not essentially a carbon copy of it, as we only see the arena go in a fight and some chunks of and a little bit of LA go into a fight as well. But I feel like it did borrow from that scene a little too much to a point it could become somewhat somewhat noticeable in my opinion. The movie is very silly, and of course the movie is so silly it's very proud of it, and we have to give it credit to actors being Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson for taking essentially one of the most beloved comedy IPs known originating out of the 80s and into the 90s, and essentially transforming it into the modern day without alienating anyone and just pleasing quite a lot of people, surprisingly, to a point it's definitely one of the best comedies we have seen coming out of this decade so far. And definitely humour in this film is definitely on the spirit, and definitely understood and definitely embraced what made the original film so popular, and as well as the Jim Abrams and the Sucker Brothers original stuff, being like Airplane and Top Secret and the Hot Shot films, and how they kept that slapstick humour keep going by the minute, and how they keep the momentum up going, and how even the more background jokes, like I did mention before, pretty much strike a chord to a lot of audiences that essentially been rewarded for having them being that they were paying attention as well. Like, This movie is so would I say the movie is so self-aware, not to the point it takes itself so seriously, but it's self-aware that it's a sequel to the original movies, and also respects it as well, due to the fact as well. But we'll not talk about O.J. Simpson in that particular part whatsoever. So without further ado, I'm feeling a 9 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of the Naked Gun film this year? Let me know in the comments down below, like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky and Letterboxd, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye.